BAC Debate Open 2020. To first congratulate all teams on making it this far. In opening government, we have NWSAJ. We have in opposition NWSEI. Closing government Tailors A. And closing opposition NWSYA. My name is Ernest. I'll be your chair for this finals. Paneling alongside me will be Aaron, Christina, Ram, and Taha. Without further ado, on the motion, this House believes that privileged minority persons living in a conservative society should not emigrate to more liberal countries, and call upon the Prime Minister to open the case. Here.
Yeah, you can speak from the table. Up to you.
This debate is not only about that one privileged minority. We say on the side of opening government that this debate opens up to the whole community and that it includes every single layer and every single individual who is also part of your minority, that on the side of opening government we think that you should represent, right? So just a bit of setup coming from side of government. What do these privileged minorities look like, right? More often times than not, it means that it looks like your African Americans in the US, or your poor individuals in these not poor individuals, or like your certain minority groups in certain countries. Means that more often times than not, you are a person who is seen, who are shined down upon by the normal society. But in these particular instances, it more often times means that you're educated, it more often times means that you're rich, and that you more often times have some form of monetary leverage for you to even leave the place in the beginning. This is what the privileged minorities look like under status quo. So what do we mean by like the liberal structures that you want to move to? More often times than not, it means that it's a structure that these individuals will go to as a form of running away, or as a form of going to a place where they are more accepted of the society, as you say, a place who accepts African Americans, or a place that accepts the Chinese. These are more likely the places where your individuals are able to will go to, considering that they are more liberal and that they are more accepted of going, right? So what do we want on the side of opening government? We believe that this individual should not leave, because we recognize that we want to protect those who are most vulnerable in this particular system. That is to say, your middle class and your lower class individuals of that minority group within that particular country. We say that these are the most vulnerable individuals because they are going to be hampered upon the most, and that these are the people who your majority will always want to restrain at the end of the day. We say that on the outside, there's a principal obligation as to why you as a privileged individual, you as a privileged minority should stay, and that only under our lives are you able to create a better life for these individuals. I'll take someone to conclude.
What exactly do conservative societies on your side of the house look like?
Yeah.
Conservative societies in this particular instance means that you're oftentimes against your minority race or your minority group. That is to say, your white individuals in the US, or even in some instances your Malays in Malaysia. These are the sort of conservative structures that we look like, and these are the exact reasons why your individual should stay in their day, right? So let's deal with the principle, right? As to why is it morally justified, or why is there a moral obligation for you to stay in the first place? I think the first thing we need to know is that you're one of the more lucky individuals. That means that more often times than not, you are to go to school, you are the individual who was born into a family that was able to leverage for you to actually get this education and get the money in the first place, right? But I think another thing we have to note is that more often times than not, the reason why you're privileged in these instances, or the reason why you got the leverage even more once you grow up to get your business, is because of the sort of support you get from your minority structures, right? Because it means that your African Americans buying into your product, or your African Americans providing labor work for you in the end of the day, considering that it's a conservative structure, it's less likely for your white individuals to want to work for you, or your white individuals to want to actually buy your clothing in the end of the day. We say that more often than not, you are only able to leverage all this because you have support from these minority structures in the first place, right? Because the notion set within the societies more often times means that your majority will think that your minority has a low quality of product, or that I shouldn't work for him because he is not my race and that he's not with me in every day. The reason, And another thing to note is that the reasons why minorities buy into your product or they work for you every day is because they recognize that you are a person of intelligence and that you are a person who will be able to help, who will represent, and who will want to, and who will more often times than not liberate yourself in every day, because they recognize that they are in a state where they require some form of liberation and some form of reform that only you are able to get in your life. Right? So, before I'm going to take opening.
So if you say that the minorities are constantly shunned in your country, then tell me how you're going to bring change under your side.
Okay, so the thing is, right, the principle, we agree to a certain extent that it will be hard to get change in their own. But something we have to abide to, or something we have to recognize, is that you living this in the first place is unjustified, which is going on to my next day of analysis, because the life of these individuals will be far worse under your side. That is to say that now these individuals are going to keep on getting discriminated, and that these individuals are going to keep on getting bashed by your majority individuals. They don't have any form of leeway, or they don't have any form of back to fall upon at the point in which your privileged individuals, the individuals who have some representation, or the individuals who have some form of leverage to go off of. That is only the sort of back, or the only sort of support structure that they have under our side of the house. Because understand, when you leave, there is none of these individuals. There is none of these individuals, and now your minority groups have no form of leeway have no form or have no back to lean on in the first place, right? So under their side, you ignore the fact that these are the individuals who are most harmed. You ignore the fact that they are the person who supported you, and that these are the individuals who who actually help you to get to the place you are. You ignore you are being negligent, and this is a horrid thing because it means that you ignore their support, you ignore that they're vulnerable, and you didn't. And another thing to know is that they didn't choose to opt into this life. I already taken two. Sorry. So another thing to know is that they didn't choose to opt into life. Something they cannot do, but you can do, is that they cannot run away. You have the option to run away. And we say it's unjustified, because in these particular instances, it means that you are able to go away from this discrimination, you are able to go away from all these abhorrent things that will happen to you, but these individuals don't have that choice. If somehow you are able to bring all of these individuals away, we say it's fine. But the reality is that you are unable to. The mass of these individuals are just too much for you to even take into consideration that sort of option, right? And the outside, to the very least, we stick to the individuals who supported us, we stick to the individuals who understand our sufferings, and that we understand their sufferings as well. What we need from an opposition right now is a comprehensive account as to why it's justified that you leave these individuals who have helped you, who have lived these individuals who are most vulnerable, and the individuals who is going to be more harmed when you leave the country, when you leave the state. I have never been prouder to oppose.
Thank you, Prime Minister. To start the case for the opposition, I'd like to first invite the Leader of Opposition to open the case for... here.
So, opening government had decided to kick off today's debate with a clear assumption that he told us that, hey, once these individuals emigrate out, they're going to completely forget these individuals on ground. Let's kick off this debate well. I think as a person, as also a privileged minority, it does not mean that you're excluded from going through all the barriers. I think you also have suffered through the barriers, and you also want to create change for the individuals on ground. We tell you that these individuals will not forget the ones that they left behind, and in fact in their new liberal country, you actually fight the most to begin with at the end of the day. So in my speech, I will do two simple things. One is I'm going to kick off my speech with a simple point of refutation against Afif's principle, and secondly, I'm going to talk to you about the most important argument in this debate, where you're actually going to drive these individuals out of for safety, and also you are able to garner the most change for the individuals on ground who desperately needs it at the end of the day. So Afif decided to kick off his speech by saying a principle justification for them to stay in the grounds to begin with, is I told us that these individuals have helped them the most, hence you need to reciprocate that. I tell you that this principle falls when you get to prove to you that this individual who is privileged is able to reciprocate their help more when they are outside the countries. Notice that when they are out of the countries, they are able to garner the most change. I'm going to explain the argumentation. Hence, your principle falls. But also, second, that once you're out of the country or the conservative societies, that notice now you're able to utilize your privilege the most, that's when you're more morally justified to get out. Because notice when you're in your conservative societies, often no matter how fucking rich you are, you're not able to go to media centers or also not able to voice out your social injustices, because in the society that you are, people still deem your social injustices as a regular basis that is justified to begin with. I tell you that it's more important and also more principally justified that these individuals get themselves out of the country at the end of the day. What is side opening opposition's goal and goal in this debate? Two things. One, we're going to prove to you why these individuals, once they're out of the country, is more likely to be the battering ram for social change. B, we also talk to you why we get to mitigate the most harm in this debate inside of the opposition, right? So moving on to my argumentation. How are we able to actually take the most change and how are we going to get the most safety at the end of the day? So notice that a gay Muslim in Pakistan, a gay rich Muslim in Pakistan is also endangered. And also like a rich Muslim in China is also endangered to begin with. It means that you're not able to create change no matter how determined you are. Because notice that they still delegitimize your privilege, they still see your mansions as somewhat as a luck, and also they're going to delegitimize it to begin with. So therefore you're not actually able to suddenly go and also gain the media attention at the end of the day and also create some legal form of change at the end of the day. So I tell you, there's more that you're going to be true, that you're going to create change on our side once you're out of the country at the end of the day. So notice that the reason why it's true that they're still going to delegitimize your privilege is that this is like number one, notice that the values that is embedded in them also is a lot, and also it's like it takes a long time for them to erase the mentality and the stigmatization. To begin, the stigmatization is solidified through multiple layers of society and a lot of narratives backing that up to begin with. But B, this also is like you have privilege, it also gives them more reasons to hate on you because you have more capital in your possession compared to a normal average majority to begin with. It means that you have more reasons to actually turn down on you because of your privilege at the end. It means that you're more likely to be exposed to more harm than an average minority. But notice that this is very bad when you maintain yourself, like you decide to stay yourself in your country, in this conservative society, for two reasons why is it bad, right? Number one, is that notice your privilege is now at risk. Notice that when the gay rich Pakistan, gay rich individual gets to roam around Pakistan, gets to walk around the streets freely, people will see that this individual, if they're able to walk around freely, even there are more people of the same values are able to go out and sprawl around the city to live. This means that they're going to try their best to actually cater to you and also like put down your, have more like structural barriers in order for you to get out and integrate into society. Without you, we prefer that normal individuals and minors fighting organically rather than a privileged individual that's busting out of their doors and also exposed to society, which is going to create more hatred at the end of the day. Without that is where your privilege is going to be at risk. This is like them delegitimizing as well. It also, the worst impact is also, notice that when the structural change is demanded, when you make it less hard, you make it more harder for individuals who are in minorities to become more privileged or at least get to the bare minimum of living standards to begin with. Because if they see you being privileged as something that can happen, they want to reduce that. They want to see you as the most like suboptimal life standard that you're able to go to begin with, right? So they tell you that that's when your minimum your living standards are going to be lowered, because that's when your people start to demand to you to have less rich individuals as less gay individuals, or for example a woman to begin to explore around the city as they like. I think that that's more reasons to hate on them as well.
If you already said that even privileged individuals are going to be hated on, how do you think the lowest of the low, the underprivileged of the minorities are going to fare without these privileged individuals?
Alright, so the situation in this countries without these privileged individuals, it's not going to be much of a difference. But we tell you that once they're out, we tell you that's when things are going to get better. But the reason why it's no different is you notice that progress is like progress is stagnant regardless how privileged you are at the end of the day. The ones who are fighting for you are your tolerant majority people to begin with. Those are the ones who actually uplift change and also fight for your change. It's not our rich as individuals who are minorities to begin with. I think that's something to be clarified, right? So second, the most second harm is I notice that these rich individuals are also more likely to be at harm to begin with. We tell that when their safety is at risk, that's more or less likely for them to actually create change at the end of the day. This is like them actually getting beaten up. Also, this is like them actually getting more structural barriers at the end of the day. In comparison, safety is much better in these liberal countries at the end of the day when they have more like inclusivity at the end of the day. But notice that you're much more able to actually create change when you're at a liberal country, because in a country that legitimizes your privilege, they want to actually give you more because they think that your minority has suffered through a lot of stuff to actually gain those privileges at the end of the day. It means this is two things. One, they're giving you more privilege, and B, to all this is like them asking to reach out to these individuals that you left behind at the end of the day. This is like left-wing media that actually cater to you, and also to the best cases of scenario have governmental intervention, but I'm sure not to that extent. We tell you that to the very least, it looks like awareness, this is like criticism to that particular conservative society. To the very least, this will actually increase the living standards. Why is argumentation important? Why? This is because the benefits that is going to be talked about on OG is not necessarily going to be materialized, because them reaching out is harmful and them staying silent is also harmful. But this argument is also important because it also shows where people on side opposition is better off on side OO. Let me probably
Thank you, Elo. Next, I'll call upon the EPM to continue the case for OG. Thank you.
John, that bit, sorry, you're right, yeah. Wait. Recording you.
I think something we need to understand is that change is very hard to get, achieve under both sides. So what side of opening government wants to do is how are we best able to lessen the suffering of individuals within those communities, right? Because recognize that whatever benefits that they try to give you was things like raising awareness or criticizing the conservative society for whatever they have done after they have left. But I don't see any actual benefits of that. It's just making people more aware, but I don't see why people will actually care about you. And I'll tell you why they'll actually care less under the side of opening opposition. But firstly, one rebuttal that doesn't fit in, because he talked about how if you're more privileged, you'll be targeted more, right? And you have less incentive to create change somehow. But I think you still have the incentive to create change, the point at which you are still inside that conservative society, because you are affected by it, right? So you, just because you are constantly being hated upon, but you have that ability and that capital to operate upon, I think you still have the ability and you will still have the will to have some form, to create some change within that society, right? So firstly, what is the burden that we need to win, right? So firstly, since change cannot happen, I think we are the side who will lessen the pain or the suffering that the individuals will face under the status quo. How have we proved that, right? Because when my PM talked about how it's unjustified for privileged individuals to leave because they've also been helped by their friends or family or individuals from the same community, I think it's also when we need to protect the most vulnerable, right? Why do we need to protect these most vulnerable? It's because of the degree of choice, right, for starters. That means these individuals who do not have privilege, who do not have money, but have to stay in this society because they're trapped there and they cannot move out. I think the degree of choice for them is much less. That means they do not have the option of moving out. I think it's unjustified for you to, just because you have some form of choice to move out, you take it, right? But secondly is the degree of pain that these individuals face. Rich individuals who are privileged have money and capital to cushion themselves from whatever discrimination they have, from whatever discrimination that they are facing, whether it's to buy things for themselves to make themselves feel happy, or just having a much better lifestyle. I think that the degree of pain that privileged individuals face inside these conservative societies is much less compared to underprivileged minorities in these societies, right? So, secondly, how are we able to help these most vulnerable in the society. Because at least we give some form of representation for these individuals, the point at which privileged minority persons are still inside, right? Because on a scale, I think it's much easier to help people on the ground than in opposition. Because if you leave those countries, there's no one on the ground to help those individuals to maybe set up education funds or whatever, to help the people on the ground. Your side is a much more indirect way. That means you sitting from far back and saying to other people, help my brothers and sisters in these countries, right? They need help. I think it's really harmful and it's not going to be beneficial at all because you aren't actually able to directly give any form of benefit or money, monetary help to these individuals on the ground. Secondly, is that acknowledge that there are individuals who can push for the policies for these underprivileged individuals. Recognize that if you leave these underprivileged minority persons lose all forms of hope or all forms of happiness that maybe someday my wants will be catered to, right? Because what happens when you leave is that you even if you tell them don't worry, I'll help you when I'm living in my bungalow in a non-conservative society, I don't think that's when they are able to feel reassured that you're actually going to help them because you're actually abandoning them and aren't actually going to cater to them, right? How will they feel then? Is that they're going to feel neglected by their own privileged minority person who wants to care about themselves and would rather leave them to die. Before that, sure.
Can you explain why physical presence is so important in your work? Recognize you can just hire a contractor to build a school or buy in some teachers at your state which are poorly run.
Because once you leave the country, you lose all your privileges that you have in the country. That means you can't help your individuals if you leave the country because you lose your status as whatever privileged individual. That means you lose all those abilities. Also, I don't think you can actually stay on the ground while still being in a liberal society, right? So what is the comparative? Is that it's harder to achieve any change, but on the side of government, I think we still have some support and interdependence on each other, right? That means those rich, privileged minorities can still help those people on the ground while the minorities can also work for them in their factories or whatsoever. But secondly, the underprivileged individuals do not lose hope that there's no one fighting for them anymore, that there's no one to champion them. But because even if they are unable to and they are being shut down, at least they know that somebody is there and somebody can voice out their opinions if they are able to, right? But thirdly, representation dies completely on the side of opening opposition, right? Because even if change happens outside and you want to help those individuals inside, it's much harder to, right? Because now that you don't have any privileged individuals who are on the ground inside those areas, it's harder for you to make those benefits translate directly inside. It will take a much longer time because now you don't have anybody in power to help, even if you want to have change or whatsoever. So what happens on opposition is I don't see any benefits happening under their side because how will they fight from the outside is through awareness and criticisms. I don't think that's enough to help because change is very hard to happen. They have considered that. But lastly, will they even continue fighting properly, right? Because if individuals, it's harder for individuals to truly understand the problem that these individuals face, right? Because if they see that somebody from this minority community was able to leave that problem and leave all the plights and sufferings and they're capable of getting out, I think that is when it's much harder to play the victim card, right? Because individuals in these liberal societies see, you've been so successful and you've been able to escape that horrible suffering that you've gone through and that you've gone through. It's harder for them to tell individuals that, my other friends and family back in the USA are still suffering, right? It's harder for you to do so, and it's easier for individuals to downplay whatever suffering you're facing because the urgency of that will lessen if you aren't able to tell individuals and stay in that community to maybe even continue to get discriminated, but at least individuals continue to sympathize with you. I think the benefits that we're able to reap on the side of opening government is much better for individuals on the ground in these communities.
Here. Thank you, Iyad. To conclude the opening half of the exchange, I will call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Cheng.
think opening government, from the very beginning of the speech, right, when they come out to tell you about the principle about how you're not supposed to abandon the people who brought you up, but then my speaker already came up to tell you that the fact that most oftentimes not, the people who go towards these other countries will more likely remember the plights of these people, these minorities that are suffering as well. I think then the second speaker, they come up to tell you that, oh, firstly, people won't listen to you. Secondly, that people won't think that your problem is urgent. I think the things that we're going to talk about in this debate will sway you to the side of opening opposition when we tell you about how these people will more likely bring change, bring representation towards the people who needs it the most. So what we're going to do in today's debate, number one, we'll tell you about how which side can bring you the most change and the most representation on this side of opposition, and also secondly, about the steps of how you're going to bring awareness and change towards these sort of structures, right? So with that, a few rebuttals. One rebuttal that doesn't fit into my speech, right? Because the thing that I wanted to talk about is that recognize that they traded off the fact that the help that they're going to provide is things like providing schools, providing small hospitals that bring marginal change. I think under opposition, if we can prove to you the fact that we want to bring structural change that directly deals with the conservative societies under these sort of countries, I think the visibility or the scale of help that we can provide for these minorities is something that's so much more better than what they can offer. Right? And also just one trade-off to clear things out. Okay, we understand that maybe not all rich minorities that escape from these countries might go back and help their minorities, but we think that the trade-off, we believe that it's so much more better, is that we rather have 5 or 10 rich minorities that escape from these countries to actually speak out of these sort of issues, rather than having 50 rich minorities under your country that provides little to no change at all. I think we trade that off. But with that, this goes on towards the things I want to talk about. There's a few things that we need to tell you to achieve the goals that we want to have. Number one, how we can achieve more awareness and more representation on the outside, which links towards the arguments that my first speaker wants to talk about. Because understand, they didn't want to deal with the principle that my speaker wants to talk about, right? Because they say that, people that are less likely going to help you, and therefore there's less urgency to help you. Under these sort of circumstances, we'll give you 3 levels of analysis for why that's not true. Number one, we tell you that these people who go out from these countries can fight for the awareness that they have. The reason why Aung San Suu Kyi, that came out from Myanmar, right, when there was a Rohingya genocide, and how she came up to tell about these problems, tell about her struggles, and tell about all these people who are struggling to survive day by day. I think under these sort of circumstances, when you go towards these liberal countries, it's also where people are more likely to listen to you. This also can mean the Uyghur Muslims that are suffering in the concentration camps, even right now in China, right? When these privileged minorities had the ability to escape, it also means that these people that came from these people that ran away to America or something will be able to report to other people about the struggles that they have and the things that they saw in these camps. I think under sort of circumstances, under their side, they'll never achieve that. And I think they played off I think it was really soft or convenient under government that they came up to say these people aren't actually suffering that bad. I think my speaker already came up to you that the people who are on a day-to-day basis, their lives are being endangered, right? Because even though if they are rich, they're still a Muslim gay person in Pakistan, and therefore they are always in danger of getting stoned. So under these sort of circumstances, I think they downplayed the harms and the endangered people or these minorities under government. Just because you're rich, it doesn't mean that you're safe at all. So with that, this goes on towards my second level of analysis. Before that closing.
Why would the government of India care if a privileged Muslim Indian rants about them in a news show in the US?
Yeah, okay, that leads on towards the next thing that I want to talk about. For the second level analysis about why you can achieve more change in liberal countries. Understand that my first speaker came up to tell you that even though if you're rich, the problem is that there are structural barriers that it prevents you from speaking out from these sort of things. This is like how China like refrains or like blocks out the media from reporting on like the concentration camps that appear in China or in Russia, right? And so, or even in Pakistan, right? So under these sort of circumstances, the change or like speaking out the things that you want to do will never like appear in your countries. So what happens when these minorities escape and go towards a much more liberal country like America, right? So I think under these sort of circumstances, these people can, for example, go towards these sort of shows because go towards these sort of shows and then speak out about these troubles that they can have. So what does this mean? This means that going up to interviews or going up to or having some television time on air to talk about the issues that they want to have. So what does this mean? This means that people who see these television shows or read these articles are more likely to be or more likely to realize the problem that they have at their hand. Because if we see a headline about 1,000 Uyghur Muslims that was trapped in the concentration camp in China and I was the lucky person to escape, under these sort of circumstances, people are more likely to be interested in it and therefore it becomes more and more viral. Why is this important? Because that brings the change that we want under side opposition. That's something that's mutually exclusive under government where they can never get. Because number one, more people will be more aware about the issues or the struggles that you face under side opposition. Because the problem is that when you are unable to speak out against these sort of troubles, it also means that you cannot talk about these sort of issues. So this means that when these people come out and speak about these sort of issues, like Aung San Suu Kyi speaking about these troubles that they have under the struggles of being a Rohingya, I think under sort of circumstances, you help people. You help them speak out, and therefore the people who are over there who are ignorant, or people who don't have a lot of information over these sort of circumstances will finally have some sort of idea of what's going to happen. This means that people would start to rally, people would start to sympathize the causes of you and the struggles that you have because of the power that you hold. So therefore, I think under sort of circumstances, the outcome of all of these is that we can actually push for structural change under side opposition. When people start to talk about it, when it becomes a worldwide issue, it also means that the things or the government from these concerned societies will have to do something about it, right? From all the backlash that comes from international pressure, things like the international press, when Al Jazeera sent journalists to go towards these concentration camps, to talk about these sort of issues. Under these sort of circumstances, this is where these rich people can actually help the people who are the most suffering. The long-term benefit that we have is that we help the people who are the most vulnerable. Help them.
Thank you, DLO. To start with the closing half of the debate, I'd like to first call upon the member of government to present his case. Here.
Panel, we have to agree that the debate was super messy. Firstly, side opposition came out and told us that when you go outside of the country, there'll be more change. Okay, A. How does Rohingyas going to Malaysia achieve more change in Myanmar? I didn't know that because we're not talking about Rohingyas achieving change in Malaysia. We're talking about Rohingyas achieving change in their own country, which is Myanmar. Okay, so you have to take that into consideration in your side. But B, at least in your own country, you have a collective voice. Because as a privileged person, you have the power to support all your community members and voice out together. Compared to a world where you go off alone to a more liberal country, but at the end of the day, you're just a single single voice still. But thirdly, you need to understand that privilege in your own country and privilege in other countries are totally different. That means like if you're a millionaire in Malaysia, when you go to US, you are not a millionaire anymore. You end up with like 300,000 bucks. Yes.
A collective and a plural voice in a silence in your side. Don't you think a singular voice that is going to be echoed on side opposition is what we need in this debate?
Yeah, sure. Deal with that in my lecture rebuttal, right? Okay, so your deal with the privilege in this country doesn't mean privilege in other countries, but so the second thing that side opposition came and told us was that liberal countries accept you, therefore you will get all the change you want, therefore you will become the king in that country and everything like that. Okay, first of all, liberal doesn't mean totally accepting, like totally liberal and accepting. It's just more liberal than your country. That means you don't really get all the change that you really want. Okay, but since they wanted Charlie and the Chocolate Factory so much, okay, let's give them that. What happens? We need to understand that when a country is totally accepting, then there's no change that can happen. Because change can only happen when there is a space for change to happen. That means like if you're a Muslim in like Saudi Arabia, there's no need for change. You need change for Muslims in US. That's what you need. So like we don't get that, right? But the third thing they say is people that go to these liberal countries will come back. Okay, sure they treated it off. But like I don't see any Rohingyas coming to Malaysia going back to Rohingya. Okay, so like, because once they feel the amount of peace and like lesser discrimination, they obviously don't want to opt for like all the struggles again, right? That's why they're not going to go back. But for they told us that privileged people and unprivileged people receive same amounts of discrimination. Okay, this is false. Because you're privileged, you're protected by cables, connections, people with power, and that's what they fail to characterize in today's debate, right? This is how we differentiate from opening government. We actually take down opposition's case and just don't give out taglines without any analysis, right? We think a privileged minority looks like a Muslim in India or a Rohingya in Myanmar. And even if he does go to other countries, he will still get discriminated because it's not totally liberal and accepting country. Because number one, they're a minority, which means that like they're a minority, right? Obviously these countries prioritize their own people compared to some Rohingya, right? So in Malaysia, we prioritize Malaysians over Rohingyas. That's why they don't necessarily get all the power they mentioned, right? Alright, so principally we tell you that they cannot leave their country because of two reasons. A, they profited off of their community. For example, J. Cole raps about his black community and then becomes rich. He uses his community's background and all like that to get the profit that to get the privilege that he got in the first place, right? But B, we tell you that they shit on their own people, right? Through means of number one, capitalism. Like, for example, they're either born with it, like born rich, like maybe the parents are like businessmen and stuff like that, or they conform to the majority, right? But number two, they lobby for policies that neglects the minorities' right? Like for example, if you're a businessman in like, I don't know, Myanmar, okay, if you're a businessman in Myanmar, like you obviously want to prioritize your own profits, therefore you only lobby for like policies that that has connection with corporations more than you lobby for policies that doesn't concern you, right? Doesn't concern you because you're a privileged person and you don't get the same discrimination that the minority gets, right? And thirdly, we tell you that there is political house trading, right? It looks like blatantly neglecting minority rights. For example, only caring about environmental change, right? We tell you the problem with using all these utilities is to make themselves privileged. Everything is exacerbated, right? We tell you that, right? But the reason why this principle is important is because minorities that aren't privileged in this country cannot move out of conservative society, right? We tell you that because of four reasons. they're a minority, right? They can't vote people that don't go with their rights. They can't vote them out because they're a minority. But B, we tell you that the mindset of the majority, that only benefits themselves, right? The mindset of these privileged people, that only benefits themselves. That's why they can't get out. But C, we tell you that they have no representation from strong structures like politics. And D, we tell you that people are conservative. The motion happens in a place where these people are conservative. That means people are afraid of change. That means media is not portraying what these minorities, like liberal policies and stuff like that, right? We tell you the comparative is, this minority person who is privileged can make a difference, right? We tell you they can invest in political structures, like lobbying for representation. We tell you that this is super important because they're the only ones that can do this, right? Because they're the only ones that have these connections and the power to do so. We tell you that they can access things like media empowerment. And number 3, we tell you that they have lobbying power. They can invest in politics that help the underprivileged. And number 4, we tell you that discourse happens when there is more clarity in struggles because you have the platform. And B, we tell you if all privileged people stay in the country, the minority community is way better, right? With that, that's my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member of Government. Next, I'll invite the Member of Opposition, Afif.
The reason why the closing government bench was able to run away with all these blatant assumptions they made was because of the failures of the 2 opening houses to just make a few simple clarifications. Side closing opposition is going to be the first bench in this house to provide those simple characterizations that were missed out, along with providing 2 new extensions and just clearing up this whole hell of a mess. The first thing, what exactly do these conservative societies look like? They look like societies which oppress women, which call women who wear like short sluts, which just simply treat minorities like shit because they believe that they do not deserve human rights. It looks like your super extreme conservative societies, which aren't simply open to change, simply because so many of their generations have been forced to be indoctrinated to buy into this really backwards narrative. But what do these liberal societies look like? These liberal societies doesn't just mean that they're not conservative. It means that they're open to change. So for you, a privileged minority, emigrating to these liberal societies, it means that you will be accepted simply because the people there are open to change, do recognize your plights, and it doesn't mean that they will necessarily discriminate against you because you're a minority. Recognize the concept of a liberal society is that it's open to change and it's perfectly fine with people coming from all sorts of backgrounds. Firstly, a few rebuttals towards the opening government and closing government bench. The first, the problematic alternative that was brought up to you by the opening government about how that if you stay in these societies, which already structurally disenfranchise you, you're still able to provide some sort of empowerment. We give them the benefit of the doubt and say that even if you're able to build some schools or give these people financial aid, you still aren't able to protect them from the sort of blatant discrimination they face on the street. So for you as a minority walking out on the street, it still means that you'll be sort of harassed by men who catcall you. It still means you'll be called really offensive racial names. It still means that you'll be subjected to all this sort of bigotry on the streets. But not only that, let's just answer their concern about how they link emigration to betrayal. Recognize that privileged individuals have also suffered through the sort of bigotry that exists in this conservative society. So even if I'm a rich gay Muslim in Pakistan, I still get called out on social media for my sexuality. I still feel unsafe simply because my society hates me. It doesn't mean that I'm oblivious to all these sort of things just because I have money. Recognize that it doesn't mean that if I have privilege, it automatically clouds my judgment. But not only that, I think you're more likely to desire to give back to your community simply because you feel sorry for them. You do recognize that they were victims of circumstance, which is why you still have that principal obligation to help them even in the side of closing opposition. But secondly, what exactly is principally justified? Recognize that I think it's much worse off for you to stay behind and fight a lost cause where you simply cannot get any sort of manufactured change. Compared to emigrating to another country, being able to change the very mindset of those people stuck in those echo chambers. Side closing opposition is going to be the first house in the debate that provides that missing link. But not only that, dealing with closing government, even if you have collective support, I don't see how you're able to change conservative mindsets when people are still indoctrinated to buy into a narrative, when you aren't able to push and shoot a bullet that can change it. I don't see how you're able to get it. But secondly, this weird-ass example of Rohingyas in Myanmar and like moving to Malaysia. Recognize first, Myanmar isn't a liberal society. The fact that they still crack down on gay people, it's already a testament to prove that they're not a liberal society. Liberal societies look like things like your Western liberal democracies, like Taiwan, societies that are more open to change. But I think you still have an incentive at the end of the day to change things back home, simply because you will have some sort of family left behind. Your friends will still be left behind. I think that itself is already your active incentive to bring this sort of change that is much required. My first extension, the sort of reasoning, I'll take one after I'm done with this. The reason why privileged individuals are so capable in garnering positive change. We concede that side opening opposition did provide some sort of substantive to why you're able to give this sort of change, but they didn't really explain how this change actually manifests and how it's actually manufactured. I'm going to do it. The first, recognize that privileged minorities, they have the financial capital and the socio-economic status which enables them to get that sort of change. Simply because that with money, you are able to fund these sort of liberal movements in your new countries. It doesn't mean that if I'm a liberal in like India, it doesn't mean like if I'm a millionaire in Malaysia, for example, I go to the US, I'm suddenly not a millionaire. It doesn't work that way. It still means that I have the financial capital to fund movements in these new societies that I emigrated to, simply because I have these sort of networks of connections, simply because I have enough money to do so. You can fund movements such as like gay rights movement, the feminist movement, the Me Too movement, which calls out the sort of things that conservative societies are unwilling to condone. You're also able to pressure your governments into consulting the governments of these conservative societies to change your policies. What do I mean by pressuring governments? It means that when you're able to lobby for all these movements to happen, and you're able to actually pressure your government to say that, hey, you need to do something because your liberal individuals are trying to fight for change, I think that is when they're able to talk to these conservative governments to say that, I think it's better that you reform your policies to become like anti-discriminatory and to change your chauvinistic and bigoted laws. Why are you so able to fund these movements better in liberal societies? People are more open to new ideologies. There are no systematic barriers that hinder your ability to get processed. I think that people in these liberal societies are more likely to sympathize with you when they realize that you're one of the lucky few who managed to escape. But before that, sure.
I don't know why you need more marchers, more more organizations to help these individuals in the liberal society, seeing as they are already accepting and they really know that there are problems that are faced by individuals of color. They really know the problems. I don't know why you still need to change their mindset in those societies. So also
recognize that people inherently have an incentive to sort of buy into things that are naturally sad, that are naturally empathetic. I think when you are a minority individual, when you escape and tell these liberal societies that even though I'm privileged, I was one of the lucky few who managed to escape, I hope that you recognize my testament and are able to support my movement in order to help those unlucky few who are left back home. I think that is where you're able to get more support at the end of the day. But not only that, recognize that when you're privileged and you have money, you can also fund these sort of media outlets to focus more of their attention onto the situation. I think that the media by nature itself is so impactful and pervasive that they're able to break people who are stuck in these echo chambers back in the societies out. Recognize that when you emigrate, you are able to extend your privilege to the fullest simply because you have no systematic barriers that prevent you from doing so in the first place. Comparatively, in a conservative society, you already have this sort of bigoted and sort of patriarchal structures that do not allow you to exercise your privilege to the fullest. When you have laws that are racist to you because of your skin color, I don't see how you're able to get the best and the most effective change at the end of the day. What has side closing opposition brought to you in today's debate? We provided that missing link to how, because by nature you are privileged, you are able to garner much more support and much more change when you escape a society that already inherently disenfranchised you. Recognize that side government has to defend a world where they aren't able to get as much as effective change and where you aren't actually betraying your people when the reason why you're leaving is to come back and save them at the end of the day. Never been harder to oppose. Thank you.
Get here. Thank you, member of opposition. To sum up the debate as a whole, I'll first invite the government whip get here.
that these people have a lot of money, enough money to go out and immigrate out to their country, have a comfortable life, and use this amount of money that they have to like leverage off of media coverage and things like that, but they also don't have enough money to have any form of political reform inside their own country. We don't think that makes sense. If you have enough money to go and immigrate out of your country into a capitalistic country like the US, it kind of is intuitive to believe that you also have some form of money to have some form of lobbying power, or have these, or at least invest in these political structures, like leading movements within the nation itself. That's some characterization that was really weird on side of opposition, right? 3 things I'll say. First, let's talk about what is privilege, or what necessarily privilege looks like, right? Because I think there has to be some form of concession on that side of the house that, sure, maybe in some instances, countries silence you. Maybe in some instances, like how the government, like how closing opposition wants to say, maybe you get catcalled, maybe you get like objectified in the media, right? But at the end of the day, what really matters is the amount of money or the amount of power that you have. To an extent, you have to understand that the reason why they're privileged is because they have benefited off of the structures within the community itself. We're not talking about the average individual who is a Muslim inside India. We're talking about individuals who have like shied away from their minority descent and actually wanted like to use capitalistic ideologies. Things like actually like conforming to the majority standards. Things like becoming a part of the corporate world. And at the end of the day, they succeeded, right? This is what privilege necessarily looks like. What happens then? The question then becomes, is it better for them to get movements, or is it better for them to get change within the country, or is it better for them to get change outside? That's the debate that has to happen in closing half, right? Here are reasons why it's comparatively better for these privileged individuals with power to have some form of, stay inside the country. Number 1, you get more collective support, right? Which is what my member told you. At least you can get some form of validation from your own community. But secondly, have a seat. I think you are closer to home, right? I think this is important because you want to win over individuals of the majority, but also you want to win over your own community themselves, right? I think the problem when these individuals goes out of their country and tries to advocate for these very minority rights, it makes it harder to believe your own minority, right? These are individuals who have betrayed your community and went away. Maybe you have some form of money to get this weird schooling, like buying teachers thing, but at the end of the day, you're not going to win them over because this doesn't necessarily engage with the day-to-day struggles. Why doesn't it engage with the day-to-day struggles? Because these people simply don't live in those day-to-day struggles. These people don't understand what it's like to be an underprivileged person in Myanmar, for example, right? There's a devoid and there's a like difference in narratives towards these individuals. I think that's a problem. Third thing is, you can have a seat, everyone. You can have some form of, you have a rallying cry, or at least you can like have some form of power inside your community, right? These individuals are privileged, which means they have some form of money for lobbying power, right? In some instances, maybe you'll be silenced, but I think because these individuals are privileged enough, or at least rich enough, they can have some form of media coverage inside that country, right? I think that's comparatively better because at least these individuals can influence the people who are of the majority or like even in their minority community as well, right? Because I think the problem why these people are like shitting on the minority is because of the lack of clarity as to what the day-to-day struggles necessarily look like. The point in which you have individuals who are privileged that represent your community, that's the point in which you can actually have some form of structural change. Before I move on to my principal closing.
How are you able to rally for some sort of change when the government already cracks down at any sign of the sort of like liberal movements within these conservative
Exactly. But your characterization cannot happen if the government is like an autocratic regime. You cannot have that much privilege. Or you can emigrate outside of the country if we're talking about like really oppressed people inside autocratic dictatorships, right? If you want a privileged person, you have to concede to a certain extent, you have a country that doesn't necessarily oppress or silence you altogether, right? Let's move on to our principle. I think this principle that Fazal told you was about how these people have already benefited of the structures that are already existing, right? This principle is important because number one, if you don't have this principle, it means that you're letting go of your identity, which means letting go of your identity. But secondly, I think it's a problem because it justifies these practices of letting go of your identity, right? It means less people are going to want to fight for your community in the future. It means these individuals, if you get some form of money, only your first reaction will always to leave and go away out of your country because that your identity doesn't mean anything to you. But number two, I think stigma is way worse on that side of the house, right? Which leads me to my third issue about how the privilege of the minority is necessarily contested, right? Because opening opposition wanted to tell you how the stigma towards these privileged people are at stake. Two responses to that. Number one, I think these individuals don't necessarily care all too much about stigma because they're already living in the upper class of their country, which means they don't necessarily have any incentive to care for that for the stigma that happens. But secondly, stigma only happens if there are no people that are privileged, right? It means that if there's no one that is privileged, it means that these minorities will always look like people who will never be able to move forward. Because if you have a privileged person, at least you have an individual that has some form of wealth and has some form of success. That shifts the narrative into maybe these Uyghur Muslims can opt out of these circumstances. Maybe these people who have been oppressed can fight through, right? I think that's the point in which you can actually have some form of, get some form of discourse or conversation that talk about these things. That's the point in which stigma doesn't happen all too much. But when there is literally no one privileged, it means there's no representation about these individuals at all. I think the problem is then it conforms the bias. These people are oppressed for a reason. These people are individuals who don't deserve to have any forms of structures and any forms of help. I'm very proud to be to used to be from MWS, but I'm proud to win this debate.
Thank you, Dr. Witt. And to close the debate as a whole, I would invite the opposition to get here.
Being privileged doesn't mean you have the right to control everything that you wanted, to fight for everything that you wanted. Recognize this debate placed in the context where it's filled with a lot of conservative structures which limits your capability to even do so at the very start. We tell you, even if Amirul tries to come here and tell you that these individuals can bring up some sort of discourse, some sort of media. I think most probably your government's going to shut down all of these media because they're not going to recognize all of these ideologies that are not in line with your conservative structure. Given that Arjun already told you that conservative structures are ideologies that be there for many generations. It's not something that you can just change whatever you want. I think also B, it's not about only shutting down. It's not about shutting down. But I think also B, also in B, it means that your progression cannot move forward. I think there are more stigmas going to bring to you, and I think that is one that is harmful. Recognize that investing in external work doesn't mean that you totally forgot about how these individuals who used to be a support structures, right? Recognize, I think you also have these individuals give you moral support while you're growing up. Maybe even when you reach in college, that they are all run by the majority. I think most probably these individuals are there at your back, giving you moral support. But I think B, that's where you have the sense of empathy to actually help them and give the reciprocal relationship that you wanted to talk about, right? I'm going to do three things in my speech. The first, I'm going to answer where do these privileged minorities able to function better, and number two, Number two, I'm going to contest the whole entire point of this opposition, right? Number one, where does this privileged minority able to exercise their privilege better, right? Recognize being privileged is not about just money, it's also about the network and the social you have to actually change a movement. Recognize these privileged minority are oftentimes also being called out in the streets, being limited certain collaborations just because they are one minority, right? Recognize that exercising comes very important in this debate. It's so hard to exercise on the side of government, given that structure, given that all the persecution towards you, that you are unable to exercise it well. Recognize that it's so much better on the side of opposition. We tell you the important characterization also neglected from Arjun is about how liberal society they are able to adapt to every single change in universe. And I think it's also very important to note that these individuals are also one that are empathetic and sympathetic, right? Recognize these are individuals who are also more likely to accept to you and want them better. Recognize the succession you get from you want to fund for all these movements is much better from the side. I'm gonna explain why. Recognize that you garner more support because these individuals are principally aligned with you. Recognize on their side, or recognize on your side, even if there are principally alignments with some individuals, with some of your minority individuals, then the debate comes down to social status. Like recognize you need people like, for example, the middle income family from the liberal societies, which are actually much better. Recognize that most of the privileged individuals on the side of government are ones that actually won't even bother to join the fight against you. Recognize that even if you have multiple rich, even if in a best case scenario, you got some sort of discourse, but I don't think this discourse stays long, right? Recognize I think all of this you're waiting for organic change are great opportunities for government to shut it down at the end of the day. Recognize that this argumentation bring up from Arjun is one that is important. Recognize when you relate it to liberal societies, that's where you're able to exercise well, and that's where you garner more support. I think this means if OO wanted to come to you about international pressure by the current liberal state government, I think these governments are more likely to accept you. That's the missing link we're going to find. We're going to tell you these governments are more going to accept you. I think why they're able to exercise their opening.
Given that liberal communities already accept and sympathize with you, we've already told you why they sympathize, and that's the point at which they view you to be successful and view the problem at hand to be less urgent than would have happened if you had not left that community.
I think it's about the reciprocal relationship. I told you because you're oftentimes being oppressed even in your own conservative society. I think even if there are not much effort, at least there's some sort of effort from outside. Comparing to your side, right, all things will be shut down by the government, and I don't think that is one that's strategic. So what to see or wanted to argue to you about, right? The idea of profit incentivized and the ability to have more platform. Platform doesn't actually work here, even if it doesn't last long. I think also even you have the profit, you don't have the power like the government to actually control all the media. The small media from you also means a larger media shutdown from the government. But I think also the collective support. Recognize collective support doesn't apply inside government because of the conservative barriers. Recognize these are barriers that are anxious for you for your freedom of speech, for every single thing that you wanted to fight for. So then the matrix comes to what's the scale of support structure, right? Recognize scale of support structure is much better on side opposition or on CO, right? Recognize that these are simple support structures that can actually help you better, right? When people recognize and more adaptive to it, I think it's one that we take the debate. Even if in a worst case scenario, we show that these individuals are profit incentivized, they reach there and then they won't come back. I think these are formed because if you want to talk about empowerment comes better when these are individuals, if they work hard and success, more people are going to write their story in the liberal society. Recognize your conservative society, nobody values your success. And I think that's one that's important, better from our side, right? And I think also a very important question is side opposite. Government needs to unexplain, but not giving you the perfect answer. It's about how. It's about why physical presence is very important, right? I think if you're really keen for giving back to your society, you're more likely going to channel a lot of funds from the liberal society towards the society. I think it also means you're going to garner more support from that. But I think this debate in the end of the day comes down to which side gains the more support. Even if the support isn't that huge, I think it's something I think something that actually can improve the living lives of these individuals, right? Recognize the consequence of international pressure. It also means that these minorities are able to go to school, are able to get proper healthcare, like in a small scale, but I think it's one that is better. Recognize on your side, this type of change totally don't happen. We'll prove to you how government are constantly going to lock you down, because they have to feed on these conservative individuals. I don't think even you have a small voice, their voice isn't that shine. For all these reasons, there has been the finals.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I invite all teams across to shake hands, and results will be announced afterwards. Thank you.